Welcome, everybody. Rob, I'm not even going to try because I just give you too many layups here.
It's a potluck, dude. I don't care what you do.
And it may be our very last one.
This is your time to shine, Trevor. You do this however you want to do it.
Just roll with it, baby.
Who am I to judge? Just the person sitting across from you at the table.
That judges all the time.
Well, silently. Most of the time, I judge silently.
Are you including your facial expressions?
Yeah, I
in
was
that?
going to say, is facial expression silent?
It's funny. It's funny. I make fun of my wife all the time because she thinks that she is super stoic, and she is not. She like has like these little like tics that happen. You know, she struggles to hold. Yeah. Anyway, I silently judge.
See, what I'm enjoying is Rob is not looking right at me. He's actually angled a little bit so he can just side-eye me as we're talking.
This is a logistical choice so that I can look at all of you at the same time because I am here for all of my co-hosts on Fast Talk.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That is
So you can look straight at them. How do you have to look at me?
I'm actually looking straight out the door, to tell you the truth, you know.
He's trying to bolt.
yeah, he's getting ready. He's getting ready.
Eyes on the prize, people, you know. Got to get out that door.
Yep. No, some of us are going to run here. Grant showed up with a question that he did not prepare us for. That is going to end the show.
It's not going to end the show.
Now I kind of hope it gets wild because I just want this to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
I think we start with yours, though.
Yeah, mine's safe. Mine's a good question. It's going to help people.
Wow. That was a passive-aggressive judgment.
Side-eyeing you.
Yeah. Well, what is your question, Trevor?
My question. If you're not racing cyclocross, then
why are you on a bike?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
and
boy. I can see where this episode's going already. This is going to be a productive one.
No.
If you're not racing cyclocross, then it's getting to the end of the season. What are tricks to get a little more time out of your form? Or should you just be pulling the plug at this point? So we're recording last week in August. This is actually going up very soon. So I think second week in September. So a lot of people don't really have any races left, but they might not be ready to hang up the bike. Should they be? And thinking about the next season, should they be trying to get a little more form? What do you guys think?
You know, I got to ask the question, when you say get more form.
Trying to keep their form going. There's a certain point where your body just says, I'm done. I need a break.
I would argue it's your mind.
Yes, fair.
But yes, there is.
Can you tell us why you argue it's your mind?
I mean, yes, the body needs rest, but...
You know what? Screw it. This is where this episode's going. I disagree.
Well,
I'm going to argue with you.
I'm here for the controversy.
Okay.
Here's my one counterpoint. A lot of people, when they get into the race season, stop doing all that support work. They stop getting into the gym.
Fair.
And that is part of it, too. The body gets out of balance.
Yeah.
And you hit that point where you go, I need to get back in the gym. I need to get back into balance. So there's a physiological part.
But I will say, though, through race season, especially in a championship type season, your body might be a little knackered from that one event, but you should otherwise be on really good form, feeling good, not overtrained, not overstressed, not breaking down. If you have all of those things, your race season is probably not going very well.
Well, my point is that I think you can stay at your peak longer than most people assume you can stay at your peak. I think there's an assumption out there that the peak is some 2-weekend golden period that's it. That's all you get. And you can't get back up there. I think that's a little bit of a myth. But what is really, really hard is mentally you're going through the logistics of getting ready for another race, being pressured for another race, being anxious, being excited, all those things. And that cognitive load, as much as anything else, is going to put you under fatigue.
Correct.
And having that break, in a lot of ways, listen, especially for masters athletes, I'm 51. When I take my quote unquote break, I'm not sitting on the couch doing nothing. I don't know that I can do that anymore. Right? When I was 26 and I was a quote unquote pro triathlete, yeah, I could pull that off. I wouldn't do anything for 2 weeks. It was glorious. But as an older rider, I have to move. So maybe that's a little easy run or something like that. But yeah, for me, it's, I don't have to think about racing for a little bit. I don't have to worry about that stuff.
Grant, I'm going to keep going with your mental side of this. And I think that following a race season, it does not mean you have to go into this full rest and recovery phase. It's not like championships were yesterday, today I don't ride my bike, right? Because maybe that doesn't fit in your calendar, right? That's all part of the macro cycle that we're looking at. But I do think it is a great time for people to actually just go out and do things that they enjoy after months and months and months of doing things that were quite scripted, quite prescribed, right? How about just go out and ride your bike for fun? And if you happen to be riding really hard up a hill, great. Maybe you're getting some threshold work in while you're doing it. That's not necessarily the point. And I think that people can actually maintain their fitness for quite a while just by riding for fun before they're taking any planned breaks, before they're going back into a planned base build or whatever else.
That was where I was going to go. And before I go there, I just have to say, there's just a theme to this episode, the garbage truck.
Yeah.
Just
How do we,
arrived.
every potluck, there's a freaking garbage truck outside.
It's
Dumpster fire.
It's an omen.
A reality.
The garbage truck should have been on fire. That would have been best.
Great.
I will say, I need to make a note. I wish we had a video of this. Everybody looks really nice in here today, with the exception of me. I look like my usual.
I don't know. This looks like it was steamed.
It's a button-up. It's a
starched.
button-up Carhartt.
I actually kind of
It's your
thought you were.
better
But
This
that
was
is
you dressed
new.
up.
This
That
is
is new. I noticed Trevor's
That
shirt
shirt
too.
is new.
I
He
noticed
walked
that shirt
in.
as well.
Yeah. You got to steam your arms later, just so you know, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I didn't iron those.
To be fair, I thought this blue Carhartt was you dressed up this morning.
No, this blue Carhartt is new since the fire.
No.
it's
I
old.
had it on when we were at the lacrosse game. I had it on. It's one of my favorite shirts.
Okay.
This is my cross season work shirt.
Yeah. And it's cross season for you.
It is, baby. We're going.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So to your point, the reason I have this new shirt, I have multiple of these shirts. I am
This
learning.
is
Sounds about
this is
right.
how Trevor shops. He finds one thing and then he buys 10.
Yes, that's exactly it. You're spot on. I don't like to shop. Once every 2 years, I buy 5 of the same thing and they
Oh my
last. me.
God.
But I'm learning relationship language.
I knew it. I know. It was like the girlfriend. It was like your shirt, the girlfriend's coming in.
My
with this one.
girlfriend made the comment, I think you would look nice in this shirt, which I realized later as we were talking about it was, you're a slob. I want to put you in better looking stuff. Buy this shirt.
I love that you said, I realized later. Oh, crap. I got to go buy that thing.
So I ordered 5 of them.
Good for you.
awesome.
It looks very nice. It's
Are
a
they
very nice
5
shirt.
all the same color or 5?
No, they're
5
all different colors.
No,
Oh,
he
okay,
does
good.
alternate the like specifics.
Yeah, so we're not like Steve Jobs level.
No.
No. It looks, for the record, Trevor looks really good in that shirt. It matches.
It's a nice
him.
sand color. Yeah, button down.
Kind of a throwback 50s style
It
looking
does
Yeah.
feel a
shirt.
little
yeah.
retro.
It's not
Is
Tommy
it?
Bahama, but I
Yeah.
could see you in a car in Cuba. In like a great way.
smuggling
In a
drugs.
great way.
So
No, like, he
we
looks
now
like-
know what the photo for this episode
I
has
kind
to
of
be.
need him to have a cigar in between his fingers and his left hand.
What was our question again?
never
The
mind.
form.
We're
You were
top
talking
season.
about kind of disagreeing with Grant at first. And something that I'm hearing
Yes.
is if you don't use it, you lose it to an extent, but then it kind of bifurcated. And we talked about the mental aspect of that and the physical aspect. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Is that similar
so-
in both?
Rob had a really good point, and I'm going to continue with that, which is where I think the mental side gets to you is when you are on peak form. It feels great being on peak form, but that's where you have to be your most dedicated. You have to be going out doing the work. That's where you see that slice of pizza and have to keep walking. You can't have the cake after dinner or whatever it is.
Well, it
You know,
depends. You know,
I mean,
That's why I'm never on
we
peak
can have
form.
that as a
Yeah.
separate question. But the point being, you are your most committed, you are your
Sure.
most dedicated, you
Yeah.
are making your most sacrifices. And by the time you get to September, you're like, I'm kind of tired
Right.
of all
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And I think the best way, and I actually wrote an article about this, to maintain form, if you want to keep form going, is to say, look, maintaining it is a lot easier than building it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be as dedicated. It's like you said, you don't necessarily have to go out and do the intervals. Go hit a hill really hard and just throw in some sprints. That's probably all you're going to need.
Yeah,
to
and
keep
at that
the form.
point in the season, I think you're right. You know, you have a lot that you're building on. But I think this is a time to do something that maybe you don't normally get to do. Like to Rob's point, go try a KOM and see what you can do. Go try a gravel race. Go try a cross race. Go try one of those things that allows you to use that late season just a little bit more. Because one of the things that I'll say is that so often we have a natural break come the holidays,
100%.
right? Or come when the weather changes. Like, even if it's not the holidays, you're not going anywhere, you're not out of town for Thanksgiving, but the weather starts to go downhill.
Or the clocks change.
Yeah.
You can't do the same volume after the clocks change.
And you just don't want to, right? It's one thing if it's December, January, you're looking forward to February racing, right? And you're like, well, I just got to get on the train. I got to knock this out.
Yeah.
But dude, you're not going to feel like that in November,
No.
December.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to hold it a little bit, keep people active.
Yep.
And then really just shut it down when it makes the most sense in the ebb and flow of their lives to shut it down.
Yeah, no, I agree too. And I think that, so what, you shut it down now and then you have to start your build for next season in what, September?
Well,
That's a
October
long
1.
time to go if your racing isn't really kicking off April, May, June in that time frame.
Well, I think there's other ways to do this. I mean, the thing to keep in mind from my perspective is there's not just one sole 2-week break, and that's the only break you're going to get in the season. I think that's an important distinction to make too, right? If you're cracked mentally or physically, you can take a break now. And then kind of wind back up. Give me a good 6 weeks to 8 weeks, October, November. And then we have a little wishy-washy funk going on during the holidays. But that 6 weeks to 8 weeks isn't wasted. It's not thrown out the window just because there's a secondary break. And I think that misconception's out there too, right? If I take another week or 2 weeks, all that work's gone. I don't think that's gone. You know, I say this a lot. Remember when I was coaching swimming, we'd have people talk about, well, you know, what you did, you got to do that distance, you got to do that volume at 14, 15, 16, because that stays with you. And then we'd have those same coaches say, well, if you take a week off, you're totally out of shape.
Sure.
Yep.
Like, which one is it?
Yeah.
You know, as my dad used to say to me, are you lying then or are you lying now? That'll fill you in on my childhood.
I was like, I just got shivers. I'm like, wait, I was told the same thing.
So this kind of moves to the side of the question, but actually that's something I just had an experience with because I have an athlete that for years we've been doing a fairly typical routine and we take several weeks off in October. We start rebuilding in November, and every November he complains, I can't believe I take 2 weeks off and I've lost everything, and now we have to spend the whole base season rebuilding it. But he, in July, went on a 2-week trip where he didn't have a bike, didn't do any training, came back. We tried to get him on the bike, and he came down with a bug.
Oh, God.
Ended up taking 3.5 weeks off, which is more than we take in the off season.
Yeah.
And sure enough, his form was right back to where it was, but he actually has an event in September he really wants to do. So, it was, you know, we talked about, do we want to kill the event or do you want to do the painful work and be ready? He's like, I want to be ready. So it has been painful, but it's actually been amazing how quickly we brought his form back. It just wasn't fun.
No, and I think that's fair. Yeah.
I feel like we're answering unintentionally the question I had. I want to be that athlete.
No, you don't.
No.
You should have seen the
Every
text I
time-
was getting after a ride where he was
Every
like,
time I got excited, Rob would be like, hey, do you have time to talk on the phone? Because he just wouldn't let me.
I don't write training without talking to people.
we'll cover your question.
As Griffin is very quickly realizing when she continues to stand me up. Griffin.
Oh.
I
Griffin.
tried calling back numerous times.
So, Griffin, here is the answer to that question. No, you don't want to do that. So part of the answer here is when you take time off, there are natural painkillers that are flowing in your body. And when you are on top form, part of the reason you're on top form is because you just don't feel the pain. The painkillers are really flowing. And that's part of why I think there's also a physiological reason for needing to take time off, because there's a point where your body says, I'm tired of the painkillers flowing.
Right.
They need to disappear. You take a couple weeks off, people think they've lost a ton of form. Part of what you're feeling is the painkillers are gone. And a workout that used to not hurt is now miserable. Something that you used to be able to get through easily, you're like, I can't finish this because you feel every last little bit of pain.
What I feel when I go through that is off the bike. Like you're walking up and down stairs and your legs just hurt.
Right.
Yep.
You know, your body just hurts. And then it's wild because I went through a little bit of this after Montana, end of Montana, coming back home to Colorado. It's when I needed to take my break, getting ready for cross, and there's some time off. And the first couple weeks, man, back in Colorado, back doing group rides with my athletes, where they just punish me. And then cross camp on the East Coast with the team I work with, and dude, I just felt awful.
Yeah.
And then this week I started to feel normal again, good again. And same volume, bigger load, but you start to come around. It's almost, that's that feeling that people talk about being stale.
Yes.
Right? That's the idea of being stale. You can still push the power. It just doesn't feel right. It hurts.
Yeah, I think that the return to form conversation is maybe a bigger conversation than we're prepared to have in the potluck. But I will say, I do think a return to form kind of depends on where you are in your form
That's true
to
too.
begin with, right?
Yep.
If you're at a 9 and you dip to an 8, I think you can get back to 9 pretty quick.
Right.
If you're at a 9 and you dip to 4, I don't know how quick you get back to 9. But if you're at a 5 and you dip to 3, it feels harder to get back to 5, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
To tell you the truth,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that there's a lot of factors that weigh in there, and nobody wants to take unplanned breaks, but we have to take them. We have to be flexible.
Yeah.
And I will say, just piggyback on that, we've watched more and more high level cyclists have these unplanned breaks and come back and be very successful. Because I think what we had in the past is somebody broke an arm, everybody kind of threw their hands up and said, you're out.
Yeah.
You're done for a long period of time. Now people are getting on the trainer, they're training through it, they're getting done, and they're getting back on the bike. We saw it at the Tour this year. I mean, Vingegaard wasn't able to win, but what he was doing,
Still strong.
Ridiculous, right? 4 weeks after getting out of the hospital, 6 weeks getting out of the hospital, whatever that was really impressive.
Right. Grant, going back, I think that earlier we were all kind of on a consensus about, hey, there's no reason to just immediately stop your training following the race season. But you did bring up, if your mind is cracked, if your body is cracked, it is okay to take a break. And that's a place that, we are right now with Melissa, my wife, who is just in Sweden for Masters Track World Championships. The day she woke up to run the 5,000, something to know about my wife is she sleeps in socks. I think it's crazy. I don't know many people.
Oh my God, who does that?
She does it.
Wait, and wakes up with them.
Yeah. She wears socks all night long. And it bit her. She was in her Airbnb in Gothenburg, Sweden. She stepped out of bed. She slipped on the hardwood floor. And the side of her foot went straight into the corner of the dresser and put a hole through the side of her foot. So she tried to run the 5,000. She made it a mile and pulled out. She was able to finish the 10K the next day, but ran real slow. And then 2 days after that, her foot was feeling slightly better and she ended up winning the cross country race. But we have decided, let's pull back completely. Let's get her foot back into a good place because she still has goals. She still has cross country worlds in November. And I'm of the opinion, oftentimes, if you're going to pull back, you should pull back, let things truly heal, as opposed to kind of nursing it along. And then you never really get better. Your training is never really that good quality. I think it is better to pull back hard, like you said, Grant, so that you can then get back into real training as soon as possible. Ultimately, I think that that's more beneficial.
I think that leads to a good point, which is the last thing I'm going to say about my question, which is if you do want that season to go longer, there's a difference between taking the time off at the end of the season and saying, it's kind of done and now I'm going to get focused on the next season versus taking a rest so that you can come back and have more time.
Yeah.
And I am a believer, if I have an athlete that wants to go through September and part of October, we're going to take a break in August, maybe take a week, and then that will help them to last longer and to make it further.
Without question.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. When you're taking the season-ending break, the training you're doing when you get back on the bike is very different. We're going to look towards weaknesses. We're going to look towards base. We're going to, whatever anybody does individually. My training with athletes shifts, dramatically. But if you're taking this short break and trying to extend the season, the training you're doing when you get back on the bike is still race-focused training, not off-season focused training. And I think that's a big, important distinction as well.
So we're saying don't take a 2-month break, train for 2 weeks and do a 100-mile race. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think that's the moral of this.
No, you can do that. I mean, it just might not be fun.
No. The answer is no.
Grant, the answer is
Hold on.
no.
I heard one yes, which means I'm not canceling my registration.
Griffin's so you're saying there's a chance.
I heard you talk about the guy in the hospital and 6 weeks later, I'm like, I could do this.
Yeah,
For
but he
those-
spent
okay.
6 weeks on a trainer with
Have
his arm
we-
propped up on a ladder.
Have we
And
publicly?
this is a guy who has won the Tour de France and done events like that.
I just
Previously.
feel
Yeah,
a surge
he's also,
of
you know,
delusional
a
confidence, and I want to
professional
ride
athlete. Have we discussed publicly your drive-by moosing?
it. It got mentioned on the entry episode.
Oh,
But
did it?
Annie said like one line.
This is where it belongs.
So
We
the
are-
For
world-
anybody who's asking, Griffin was going out for a hike. A moose charged her.
She got moosed.
She got moosed.
I got hit from behind. Yes.
Moosed.
Moose. Pinned down.
They look like they're so gentle and so docile and
They-
so
no, they do
and
not.
so dopey
No, they do
with
not.
the
You
grass
look up-
and moss hanging from their antlers.
grass.
When
The
you
boss.
look up in the middle of a
Yeah.
forest and all you see is like a rack and then muscles flinch, that is like a terrifying last visual you have
Yep.
before.
Did he snort and paw to ground? That's all I need to know.
There wasn't enough time. It was like a fraction of a second. I saw the muscles flinch.
Were
I
you
turned.
wearing red?
I don't think that's
No, but
That's a
my
bull.
God.
That's not
But it
meese.
was a bull moose.
Yeah,
so.
see? Yeah.
Meeson?
Meese.
Moosin?
Yeah.
No,
Meese.
it is. I looked this up.
I know. I've never had a
The
bull.
plural is moose.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
moose.
it's moose.
Yeah.
That's why it's fun.
Is it a herd? It's not like a murder like it is crows.
Rafter
probably
of
a
Felt like a
turkeys.
murder.
It's a rafter of turkeys. I had to
It's
go.
a rafter of
No, I
turkeys.
thought it was a raptor.
rafter. Raft.
Oh, that was a horrible
If I
sound.
can-
Don't ever do that again.
Can I get that as a visual to pair over
I
this?
don't
Oh my
know that
God.
you want a visual.
Okay.
That's so good.
And now that we've set the tone, let's go to
Yeah,
Rob's
you
question.
mentioned cyclocross earlier, Trevor, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't have a question until you sent your question, and
Love it.
I keyed off the word cyclocross in yours.
As well you should.
As well I should. Hey, you know, a trend that I've been noticing, my family and I were avid UCI cyclocross watchers, watch most of the races live when possible, but typically not. Anyway, a trend that I've been noticing is that a lot of cyclocross racers seem to be taking in gels throughout the course of a relatively short race. Now, a caveat to this
Now,
is
how short?
approximately an hour,
Okay.
give or take a few minutes. A caveat to that is that oftentimes I see it mostly on the female riders' side. You know, these riders will have a gel, say, taped to their top tube. Maybe there's a gel kind of up the short leg, and partway through the race, they're consuming a gel. In general, I think that we also see riders taking gels immediately prior to the start. And I do think that we see that a little bit more on the men's side than the women's side. But anyway, my question is, you know, to the group, is this a beneficial thing? Should people be taking carbohydrate in during such a short event? And if we do think that that's the case, then how do we maximize the benefit while limiting the potential downside pitfalls of sucking down a bunch of sugar partway through a pretty intense activity?
Well, I'll make one note and then I'll turn this over and I'll let you guys talk about it for a second. But a lot of this started with Tone Arts. Tone Arts was one of the first riders to be riding with the gel. And that was back before his doping suspension. And he was riding with one up his short leg. And that was probably 5 years ago that I first saw him doing that. I think the women got onto it pretty quickly with Lucinda definitely having that. So I think a lot of that also came out of Sven's team
I
telling
was going
us.
to say, is this a Sven thing more than anything?
It may be. It may be.
For those that don't know, Sven Nys, absolute cyclocross legend, now the DS owner of a team.
principal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's borderline getting ubiquitous
Yeah.
in the women's field and pretty heavy in the men's field. I mean, if you watched U.S. Nationals last year, there was a point where Andrew Strohmeyer and Curtis White were both getting ready to take gels on the start line when Scott Funston attacked over him and just chucking gels, just like, oh, crap, gotta go. I have my opinions on this, but I'd love to hear yours, Trevor.
Oh, boy.
Yeah?
You want to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
You know, your nickname is Trevor Sugar Daddy Connor.
Just because
Yeah, but that's for a whole
Again,
different
yeah.
reasons, Rob. That's-
I'm gonna have AI procure the image for this episode. It's looking real good.
so my thoughts, let me pull all this together.
Pull it
Rob,
together, boy.
Rob and I just did an episode on the research of Dr. Coyle, and one of the really interesting studies in that showed that no matter what intensity you're going, you're pulling about the same amount of glucose from the blood. And obviously you need more at higher intensity per hour, but you're really going to get that from your muscle glycogen stores. You really can't increase how much you're pulling out of the blood very much. So the amount of glucose that you are going to get from the blood for an event like that is going to be adequately supplied by existing blood glucose and by liver glycogen. So I don't think physiologically there's going to be that much of an impact, though they have shown when you consume glucose, it does have impacts on your system. It basically convinces your system, okay, I've got a more ready supply so I can go hard. Like you've seen the studies of people where
carbohydrate mouth rinse.
Mouth rinse, and they can go harder. So I think most of what you're seeing is just a mental effect of it allows people to feel they can go harder, and it just gives them a little more motivation.
So I'm gonna play Dr. Scott Fry on this and tell you that is a physiological response because your brain lights up when it tastes carbohydrate and it turns back on. And I think the biggest benefit in something like cross, where you have a very heavy technical load, very heavy cognitive load, your brain has to be on. You have to be ready for that. You have to know this line. You got to know where you got to go and those things. And anybody who has raced it hard at any level, when you race cross hard, you are in the box. Right. And it is not...
It's despair.
It is...
Through 45 minutes of despair. First 15 minutes typically feel pretty good.
I was going to say, it's 30 to 45 minutes at the end of that race of just, longing for it to be over. So I do think that it's one thing in a time trial where you're kind of head down. It's pretty straightforward. You're just going for it. Maybe the brain doesn't need to be quite as lit up and on, but in cross, it needs to be on. And I think when you're out on the road and you've been out there for a while and your mood sours and you start getting a little mad, and you're like, this road is rough. What the hell is wrong with it? I don't want to go up this goddamn wind. And you take a gel, your mood will change quickly. And you'll find yourself 10 minutes later like, all right, this is good. Everything's all right.
Griffin, mental note here. Bring gels to the potluck.
Yeah. Just if someone gets decked in the face, that's a cue, like perk up. I think that right there kind of proves my whole stance on this. I think in an acute situation, for someone to utilize gels to perk up or to use it as a method of addressing a triage moment, let's say, I think that's okay. I get worried about athletes who have chronic ingestion of these gels, and it's just such a mainstay of their diet and lifestyle that you're doing this for years because, let's face it, a lot of these gels, though innovation has led to better formulations, it's still a lot of crap. And I don't care that you're burning something off. People only think about it from a calorie perspective, but when you think about it from the sugar or these synthetic materials that get pumped in, you're constantly exposing your body to. And then you have an athlete who has years of a career and they're doing this every single day. That to me, I was trying to look up the research after you sent the question. And I don't think there's a lot of research on chronic ingestion of these gels over a period of time. So to me, it's that's what you do if you're in a pinch, but there's got to be something better to expose so many athletes the chronic ingestion of these.
Little teaser here. Thank you. Dr. Larson and I are planning an episode where we're really going to address what should you be eating and taking on your rides if health is a bigger consideration, because it is so performance focused. And we're not looking at the impact of this stuff.
Well, I think one thing to note, to look at both sides of this coin, this is not a regular occurrence for a lot of the people. Like racing is a whole nother world. They're going to take that in. More to my point, yes, it's not the most healthy thing you could do to your body, but racing cross isn't really the healthiest thing you could be doing to your body.
There's still a population of people. I mean, I'm not saying everyone's going to strap a microwaved sweet potato to their thigh and gnaw on it, on a...
You're irradiating your sweet potatoes with microwaves?
I knew I was making a point here. Oh my God.
Oh, I love that. No. You make a fair point. No, and there's a lot of people talking about the concerns of raised A1C level in athletes. There's a lot of people talking about, you have athletes coming out of a career that are pre-diabetic. I mean, we have issues in the sport because of the sugar intake. But I think what you really are seeing in a lot of those athletes is what they're doing off the bike. You do get a mentality in high-level athletes, or let me say mid-high level athletes, that I can kind of eat whatever I want. I can kind of do whatever I want. And I had an athlete come to me, a teenage athlete come to me with this question recently of like, should I be limiting gels? Should I be doing this stuff? And I said, in a racing setting, no. In a training setting, yes. You can eat real food out there and do really, really well off of real food. But really look at what you're doing off the bike.
I think that we're bringing up a really great conversation about the implications of carbohydrate during activity when we're focused on performance, but then also maybe some balance of the health benefit and whether or not having simple sugars in your diet is beneficial or not. It's probably not. Let's just state that. We do have a great library of information. Trevor and I, we've recorded a few episodes kind of on this topic. And if anybody is interested in furthering that conversation, definitely check out fasttalklabs.com. Listen to the rest of this. I think we might even have some articles, content that you can read. I want to get back into this cyclocross race, these really short, hard, intense efforts. And we're seeing people taking in carbohydrate during the event. We're also seeing people, the cameras panning across. We're checking all the tires. Are they on the Dugas Rhinos? Even though my wife calls them Rambos. She can't get Rhino in her
Rambo
head.
would be a great
I know, right? And then we're seeing riders taking in gels during that shot. What other implications do we need to be talking about taking, carbohydrate in such a short event?
So the one I'm going to caution anybody who's thinking about this on is what's called reactive hypoglycemia. So think about the basic physiology. When you consume sugar, you spike your insulin.
Yep.
And the purpose of insulin is to get your cells to take the glucose out of your blood. When you're exercising hard, the insulin response gets shut off because exercise actually causes the muscle cells to take in glucose independent of insulin. Everybody following me so far?
Sure am.
So you have two mechanisms by which your cells can take in glucose. One uses insulin, one does not. The other one's just exercise. The problem that you can run into is if you consume a bunch of sugar right before an event and you time it in a way that it spikes your insulin, and then you start going really hard off the line like you do with a cyclocross race, you now have both mechanisms active and your cells just kind of suck up all that glucose. Your blood sugar levels drop and you bonk really bad.
Yeah, I think almost everybody's probably experienced this. If you've eaten a big meal or eaten a bunch of food and then tried to go out and do a workout, and let's say your stomach wasn't upset and you're like doing the workout or doing whatever and you bonk. You're like, how am I bonking? I just ate. But that's exactly what's going on. I think one thing to pay attention to and something that I'm pretty adamant with my cross racers is have a routine and have a schedule of your food going into the start of that race.
Yep.
And I think what ends up happening is cross start times are weird, right? Elites are going at 3 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon. I remember we used to start Cross Vegas at 9:30 at night. And you've got to plan your whole day back from that. So, okay, I got to take a big meal in 3 hours before that. And that's where everybody stops. Now look before that and before that and before that. But just in that time frame leading up to the race, large meal 3 hours prior, I always really push people to do kind of a bump in calories, a couple hundred calories, about an hour out, 45 minutes out. Keep everything on that pattern, because what you're going to run into is if you have that lull and then you take in that sugar at the start, you can really run into exactly what Trevor's talking about.
Right. And because we were kind of talking and insinuating about the glycemic index a little bit earlier and spiking that blood sugar and then insulin, Grant, I think that these meals that we're having prior need to be easily digestible, right? We can't have something that's going to be sitting in our gut, but they should also be lower glycemic as well, because we don't want to be going through this blood sugar spiking process, before the event either. How do you feel, Trevor, I'll throw this to you. How do you feel about taking in carbohydrate, simple sugars during the warm up as opposed to on the start line? Do you think that we'll have better control over blood sugar and insulin in that case?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
First thing I'm going to say, if you're going to try to consume during a cyclocross race, this is where you have to go simple. You're not getting a lot of blood flow to your gut. If you put something in your gut that's hard to digest, it's just going to sit there and ferment.
Right.
And you're going to feel miserable. So when I do an event of that intensity, I don't even do anything solid. Like I'll do a drink mix if I'm going to try to get some carbohydrates that way or some fuel that. Anyway, I'm just going to do it the drink mix. 'Cause I know when I'm going really hard, if I put anything else in my gut, it's just going to make me miserable.
Right.
So I do think, getting something during the warm up can potentially help. It's just, again, experiment with this. Make sure you're not highly responsive to that reactive hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
And also be aware of the fact that you might be moving when you're warming up. But let's say you do the warm up, you eat something right at the end of that, and then you go stand on the line for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You can be in trouble.
Well, and I think you bring up a couple of really good points. It's super individual. It's really highly individualized. And like, who's going to, A, what kind of gel, B, what kind of sugars, C, when, what's in your gut, what's it taste like? All these things are going to matter to the individual athlete of how they're able to digest it. But one of the things to keep in mind of what we said early in this conversation is you're not going to get a whole lot of quote unquote energy out of that gel in a mid-race. You just don't have enough time. What you can do is turn your brain on. What you can do is light your brain up. What you can do is tell your body, trick your body into thinking there's more energy available than maybe really is. So you don't need a lot in that case.
That's a great point.
You can get away with a little flask with just a sweet drink mix in it, because all you need to do, remember, carbohydrate mouth rinse is not about anything other than tasting sugar.
Yeah.
So if you taste it, you're going to have an opportunity to get those benefits out of what you're taking in. So it doesn't need to be a lot. And I think that's an important point.
A little goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say, I want to go back to what you were saying, Rob, about pre-race meals. You have to eat a quote unquote normal pre-race meal. I think a lot of people do get caught up in this idea of all carbohydrate all the time. You need protein in there. You need fat in there. This is the meal we're talking 3 hours prior.
You're an eggs guy?
I used to be. I used to be a bacon and eggs guy before cross races, but I just gotten a little bit older and my stomach just doesn't quite do it. So now it's peanut butter. Now I turn to peanut butter, and it works really, really well for me. So peanut butter in my oatmeal, maybe some scrambled eggs in my oatmeal, scrambled eggs and rice, things like that are really pretty simple and straightforward, but get the protein in, get the fat in.
Right.
Makes a big difference.
A trick I've done with time trials, which isn't quite like a cross race, but
it's
still has some
close.
similarities,
Yeah.
is kind of what Grant's talking about. I just have something that's sweet, that when you're in that 10 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, and you're really hurting, it's all mental. At that point, it's not going to be getting to your muscle cells. Very little that's going to get to your muscle cells.
You're maintaining
in time to
blood sugar
benefit,
more than anything. Yeah.
You're maintaining blood sugar. There's just something mental about it. You just take it, and it just makes that last 10, 15 minutes easier.
I mean, we're talking about blood sugar. There's kind of a placebo effect here too. This golden elixir is going to get me to the finish line.
Well, I mean, I've been in cross races that are hot, and even a bottle of water. Because I think we don't recognize how much our body is reacting to what we are trying to put it through. We have a great episode coming up with Dr. Scott Fry about some of this. And he starts off that episode by talking about when we go out and exercise, our body is not happy. Our body's job is to kind of keep us from hurting ourselves. When you're 40 minutes into a cross race, you are hurting yourself. Even if you're 5 minutes into a hot cross race, your mouth goes dry, your body's freaking out a little bit, right?
Especially in Colorado.
Yeah, it's freaking out a little bit. And it's surprising even to me, for me, what happens even when I just blast some water in my mouth. Even if I don't swallow the water, it's just wets my mouth a little bit again. And I feel like there's a full body reaction to that might say, oh, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was.
No, it's one alarm bell that's not going off
Yeah,
anymore.
and that sugar intake might do that as well.
See, when I'm 40 minutes into a cross race,
You're just hitting your
that's
stride.
when the leaders have lapped me for the second time, and I'm completely by myself. So I'm fine.
Yeah.
So I'm usually seeing you at that point. No, I think there's benefit. And I think, it is one of those things, to kind of sum up, it is one of those things that we see a lot of teams doing, a lot of top-level athletes doing. Generally, they're not doing it without a reason. There's a whole lot of science involved in what people are making decisions to do now. But just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And you really have to try these things out. That's what Wednesday group cross rides are for, hot laps. That's what that stuff's for. And I mean, that goes for gels in the middle of a race. That goes for food in the warm-up. That goes for what kind of warm-up. That might go for bicarb. That is something that's getting really popular in cross now. Whatever that might be, you have to make sure you can tolerate it because everybody's different.
I think that's the best recommendation is experiment with this. There is that Wednesday cross race, or go out with your buddies. Try it.
Yeah. Or just try it in a race you don't care about, right? Before you get to nationals. But I would give it a try. It works really well for some people. I do it. I definitely bring a gel.
I mean, frankly, by the time I get to nationals, I'm so far over my head that I don't care about it. Like, I don't know, whatever.
Well, I'll tell you, to sum up with my guys, I'm yelling at them to take a gel if they're in a place where I think they're going to be challenged in the last 15 minutes of a race, whether by other people, by the course, by the conditions, whatever it is, they need their brain. I want them to take their gel.
I think that's one of the reasons why working with a coach should be a non-negotiable, because they have the ability to look at those things. I mean, when I started working with Rob, there were so many granular questions about my nutrition, my preferences, and some of the first longer workouts that I did, reporting back, looking at my numbers, until we got to a point where he gave me a formula. And then I could pace myself throughout really long activity. I knew X amount of minutes passed at a certain heart rate, and I would pop a gel or I would eat a snack. If I didn't have him doing that or looking at the course that I was planning on racing, it would have just been the worst DIY.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely objectivity, I think, that comes from working with somebody else, even if it's not knowledge, right? Just the objectivity of it can help bring clarity to some of these should I questions.
Lastly, I would say, if I hadn't had Rob, the number of gels that I would have been consuming would have been insane. And I can't remember, we've had this conversation before where like you take a little bit ahead of gel and you're like, woo, a little bit later. And I didn't realize that until probably my first, like a really long workout. I was going at a really high pace, and I did not go toward my instructions, which were be chill about it. And I just got so excited. It was my first time using gels and I was flying. I think my notes from that workout were, if I had picked up my hands, I could have flown. And that should have been like...
That's terrifying.
It's an Icarus situation.
It was, though.
That's terriful. Yeah, you read that as an early comment from an athlete. You're like, whoa, back it up, sunshine. Back it up.
Is there some LSD?
He did.
Gel? Where did you get that?
I texted Rob. I was like, I was flying. No, really.
Where can I get those gels?
Yeah.
All right, Grant, you have a question?
I do. So we watched at the Olympics, we watched Kristen Faulkner have an amazing race, win the gold medal. And so much of the conversation around her and that medal was she's only been riding for X amount of time, 7 years. She, picked up a bike, was training in Central Park, was an investment banker. There's something to that statement too.
There is.
But what I wanted to pose to you guys is, how is that possible, A? And why do we see that, or do we see that more in women than we see it in men? And, just how was she able to go pick up a bike 7 years ago and go to the top of the sport? Now, off mic in the green room, in the beginning of this, one of the things Trevor said kind of under his breath is 7 years really not that much time? Which is a fair point. 7 years is a chunk of time. But I just kind of wanted to put this to you guys, and I wanted you to start there, Trevor, with, all right, so how do we do this? And for those of you who are just starting on the bike, what's the recipe?
Starting there, I think I will say there is evidence that athletes have about 10 good years at the top. So it was a great study where they looked at Tour de France level cyclists, which ones started as juniors, which ones started later in life, and then what happened with their careers. And you just saw they all had 10 years of being at the top.
Wherever
if you
those
started
10
as a
years
junior,
were.
it was just earlier. If you started later, you had your 10 years later. The question is, which I've never seen in any of that research, is how much time do you need to put in before you get to your 10 years? And my guess is it's probably less than 10 years to get to your peak.
Yeah.
But probably more than 4 or 5.
I think that's probably a fair point, right? We're watching people now in the men's peloton and in the women's be phenomenal at 20, 19, 20. Okay, well, prior to 15, what can you really count that they're doing? I mean, no offense, right? You can only get so much in. So probably 4 or 5 years. I'd say that's probably fair. And if you look at her development, that's kind of on par. It's not like she came out of the woodwork here, folks. She's been a really strong cyclist for a couple of years now, and on the up and up, and shocking people every step along the way prior to the Olympics too. But I guess to my point is, I've watched this happen with several women. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, Kristen's background, at least I don't know her very well, but she has some sort of a rowing background. Talk about an ability to suffer. Rowers are up there with everybody for an ability to suffer. So you're learning something there. Evie Stevens definitely had a background in high intensity sports. Meredith Miller came from soccer. That might be the second part of this question is, where is it better to come from to get good fast as a cyclist?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because in a lot of regard, I think fitness is fitness, right? If you've done a great job of maximizing your VO2 max, your blood distribution system, you're working your mitochondria, a lot of that is transferable. I think that we see this as well. On the men's side, Grant, there's a name that we don't talk about very often, this guy, John Gaston, who's coached by a friend of the show, Adam St. Pierre, who has gone from ski mountaineering to podium at Leadville, which is both huge fitness and it's granted it's Leadville. There is still technical ability, as well that maybe is a little bit more than what you're getting on the road. So I do think that these athletes that have these years of training and these other highly demanding endurance sports 100% can make the switch into cycling. You brought up earlier that her background was as an investment banker. Right. And I think that that's key. We laughed about it at the time because you're kind of alluding to Evelyn Stevens. Her background was the same. I think that people that end up in roles and professions like that probably have this very goal-focused determination. And when they set their mind to doing something, they're pulling out all the stops, right? And they're doing everything that it takes to get there. And in that situation, I think that we can see rapid development or at least rapid transition from one sport to another.
I think that's something that no one has mentioned as you talk about all these female athletes too, and the difference between men and women's sports. There's so much to cover because women's sports haven't been as developed for as long. So it feels like, I think there's this extra layer of inspiration. That's why you see women aspiring to be other women or women aspiring to enter something that hasn't been done for them yet. And so I think there's this extra drive, and there's also room for attention to be drawn to women's sports because things haven't been.
Well, I think you bring a great point about attention being drawn to women's sports because little girls haven't had anything to look at for a long time. We've only started to have these things on TV in the last, women's cycling's only been available to watch for the last, 5 years?
And I think that's important to mention, available to watch. Not that women have been doing it. Like people keep talking about the Caitlin Clark effect. And I think, listen, love her. That's amazing. But I've been watching, women's basketball has been around way longer than that. So the women's sports getting primetime spots and getting that visibility.
Well, and getting that press, right? Yeah. WNBA has been on ESPN for a number of years, right? The Women's Professional Soccer League in the States has been on TV for a number of years. And you saw that. You saw little girls with U.S. national team jerseys on. That's what they're aspiring to. And I think that's a big benefit. It will be interesting, total side note, is to see what kind of benefit Haley Batten and Kristen Faulkner and some of these women that are being very successful on the bike are going to have on a generation of young riders now that they can see them.
Yeah.
Whereas before, hey, we had some incredible Mara Abbott, Evie Stevens, incredible female cyclists that nobody really could see. Nobody could watch the Giro when Mara won it twice. So how do you look up and try to do that?
Yeah.
But Mara didn't really start on the bike for reals until she was in college. She was a swimmer. Talk about an engine. So, I think all that stuff's kind of valuable, but to play devil's advocate, Taylor came from soccer. Taylor Finney came from soccer. He played that pretty late in his teens. Remco was an incredibly good soccer player, played that very late, 15, 16. I think the men are coming from other sports too. We just don't talk about it very much. Yeah. But without a doubt, the path for men is way earlier right now. It's not an entry point later in life. You can't enter the sport very easily at 22 or 23. We've watched people do it. Michael Woods did it from running background. We've seen some people do it, but it's very limited. I think the women's peloton is much more of a straight up meritocracy. If you're fast, you're going to get a shot.
Yep. If we think about cycling as a sport, is it just something that people find later, right? Prior to NICA, it's not like young kids were on bikes very often. They were doing other things. They were running, playing baseball,
not in the
football.
States. Not in the States.
Sure. But in the United States here, that's sort of the development process, right? Like you age out of a lot of these other sports, and maybe you pick up cycling a little bit more as a recreational thing. And then you say, I actually am okay at this. Maybe I'm going to try for the next level, the level after that. Is it just a product there, or are we discussing a change in performance over decades and we're just seeing a different way that people are reaching their peak?
Well, there's definitely some evidence that shows that women reach their peak later in life than men, athletically, right? Now, there's some evidence out there that talks about women being incredibly good almost till they're 40.
I'm surprised to hear that, just because females tend to go through puberty and maturation in that aspect sooner than men.
Yeah, and we've watched sports, and this is a phrase that I am not using lightly, take advantage of women very, very early on in their lives. Gymnastics, swimming. You've seen these prodigy 16, 17-year-olds with questions on longevity there for sure, right? But there is some evidence in research saying that the prime of their endurance careers comes later toward 40. And if that's the case, these later entries into the pro peloton make more sense for them.
I was advised, I remember being in college and, at that time, everyone was signing up for the turkey trot and different races and half marathons. And I thought, I'll do it. And I had a mentor in my life who was probably in his mid to late 30s who looked at me and he said, no, don't do it. And I said, why? And he goes, you should wait until you're a little bit older to do it. And it's made some type of comment about it impacting me kind of prior to me wanting kids, almost like a link with my fertility. Grant's rolling his eyes for those. But there was this concept or this notion then, and that I was too young to start doing endurance events and the impact that would have on me versus a male.
Well, be careful. Your uterus might fall out.
Yeah.
This is the thinking that kept women out of marathons. And like, you can't possibly run 26 miles.
Well, that's what I was told. And so I was like, I just shouldn't be doing this
until
I got to med school, and I was like, I think that
you are not that old either, which is
thank you so much.
Yeah. Stop it! It's frightening that was 2018.
Oh my God, I'm so much older than that, Grant.
That's why I was joking.
Women
but
are
still.
given that type of language. Like you're either too young for something, and then you have like a fraction of a second to participate in something. And then when you get to a certain point, it's like, well, you should have started before.
Right,
it's like,
Yes.
I'm at an age now where if I wanted to have a baby, they say it's a geriatric pregnancy. And that's the term, right? So it's like, I'm too young for this and I'm too old for that. So
what an amazing term. Just as a side note, we had our second baby when she was over 35 and they called it a geriatric pregnancy. And she's looking around going, are you kidding me?
Oh yeah. It gets violent really quickly in that room.
If there's a geriatric here, it's my husband. He's the one that's 8 years older than me. And she's right. But, I just think there is that double standard still so present. And what's wild to me is, here's the thing, right? Everybody talks about Ted Williams' baseball career. If you don't know anything about Ted Williams, he was hitting 400 every year before World War II, went to World War II for 4 years, came back and just started hitting 400 again. Everybody's like, it's unbelievable. He took 4 years off and he's that good. Women are taking 2 years off for kids, coming back and being better.
Yes.
And we're at the point where we're like, okay, that's normal. That's incredible. But it does speak a little bit to the drive that people are talking about. And I think, gender aside, that does your life get a lot more regimented after you have a kid. You get real good at planning stuff after you have a kid. So there's something to that too. But I just think it's really a lot of fun watching. And it does seem to be primarily the American women that are coming to the bike late. The Dutch women are on the bike very early. We see Europeans very early on the bike. And maybe it is just a little bit more of that path that you were kind of alluding to, Rob. They play other sports up until a certain point because the bike's not really available for them yet.
It's interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Dutch culture, it's almost opposite, right? We have a lot of young kids who are on the bike, but as you become an adult, there's not a lot of masters racing in Europe, to tell you the truth.
It's pretty wild. When you go to Masters Worlds for cyclocross, there's not a lot of Belgian folk there. No. They might be watching, but they're not. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's certainly good ones, but it's not like the Belgians are dominating Masters racing because they get done and they're done.
Yeah. And then you look at participation in the U.S. and adult cycling participation has to be 100 times what it is for youth and juniors.
Yeah, it's much higher. So there is a path here that may not even be available other places. I just wish we would open that path a little bit on the men's side too, because I do think there's late bloomers on the bike on the men's side.
Absolutely.
I'd agree with that.
That was my obstacle. When I was racing, the rule was the average age of a team had to be 26. And when I was in my 30s, they would look at me and go, if we sign you, we have to sign a 15-year-old to offset you.
Wait. When you
What?
say the rule, are you talking like where they like to keep the average
UCI
age?
had a rule
No.
that the average age, so they eliminated
Would you
about
really
10
be
years
shocked?
ago.
It's the UCI.
I know, I would.
But the UCI made a rule that the average age of a team had to be 26. And I came into cycling in my 30s.
Wow.
And when I spoke to teams, like I had lots of conversation with teams. As soon as they asked me my age, that was it.
Should have lied about
How
it.
unfortunate is that norm that you could be missing out on some really incredible athletes who could feel like they would have an opportunity. They could have a path, whatever is just like a hobby or a passion right now, that they could take it somewhere.
Well, real quick, I just want to say the UCI is a bunch of old dudes sitting around a table. So they actually thought that this was,
So there was an okay explanation
Speaking of
behind
America.
the rule, which was you saw all the big teams with money knew that the people that were winning the tour were late 20s, early 30s. So they would let all the other teams develop riders,
yeah.
and then they would grab them in their late 20s, and it made it for kind of unfair competition. So the UCI basically said, you want to hire one of those top 30-year-olds, you got to develop somebody.
Right.
And that's why they made that rule.
I think it is interesting when you look at riding in the States, look at what COVID did for that age group in the States. There's not a whole lot of pro riders in the range of like our pro riders in Europe from the age of like 24 to 26, 27. COVID really hurt them. We have a lot of riders that are younger that are incredibly good over there. We have a couple of riders that are older. The path to Europe is about getting to Europe for an American rider. And how you do that is typically you can get there early on in a Devo team or with USAC. It's harder and harder to get over there and get a shot later in life. Riley Sheehan's one of the rare exceptions, but Riley is so darn talented. Somebody gave him a shot and then he took advantage of it.
Yep.
Hey, we'll give you a shot. Oh, just go win Perry Tours. I guess we'll sign you now.
So going back to the question, I said I was going to get myself in trouble.
Yeah, I've been waiting for it.
So
So you haven't gotten yourself in trouble yet.
It's because I haven't said anything. Now I'm going to get myself in trouble. So I'm sure I'm hazy on the details here. This was almost 20 years ago. But when I was at the National Center in Canada, we had a woman who came into the National Center and she won Canadian Nationals like a year and a half after she touched a bike for the first time. Just a phenomenal talent. So maybe it was 2 years, maybe it was a year and a half, somewhere around there. Won Canadian Nationals, but then as I remember, she just was done a year later. It was a very, very short career. So you had kind of mentioned this earlier of what happens when you move up so quickly. I've seen at least one example. I've seen some similar examples of, I think you need that development time. And if you get up there too quickly, sometimes I think the athletes have a hard time handling it.
Oh, I would 100% agree. I don't think that gets you in trouble. I think we're seeing it a little bit in gravel right now. We're seeing women in gravel, for whatever it's worth, posting their Strava numbers at the end of the year. They're unreal, the amount of time these women are putting in on the bike. It's 22, 23 hours a week average for an entire year. And they have jobs and they have relationships. From my point of view and what I spend my time on, dude, that's hard to maintain. Mentally, emotionally, physically, that's really hard to do year in and year out. I think there's personalities and people that can do it quite well. And it's not to say that people can't, but it's difficult to hold and maintain.
I also wonder, we had her on the podcast episode, the entry episode recently, my friend Annie, who was with me when the moose thing happened. And one of the conversations we had this weekend was having the eggs of your life basket all in one basket. And for someone who's cycling 22, 24 hours a week, what happens if an injury results and you can't be on the bike? Do you have an absolute mental breakdown that you...
A lot of people do, yeah.
You know what I mean? And this happened. I got a text message from Annie this weekend who's been spending so much of her time since moving here in the last couple of months on the bike. And all the text said, crash bike packing trip in back of cop car going to Boulder right now. Can you come to meet me to the ER? And she has a broken arm. She's flown out to like Hopkins right now to get it assessed. And we had to have a big conversation on the way back from the hospital about structuring her life and what this looks like for the recovery time. So I hear that from people. I go, what's going to happen if that one thing is taken away from you?
Well, we see it in development and youth athletes all the time. And this is where I think coaches are really important to rein you in a little bit from that.
Yeah.
But also good coaching is super important because I think poor coaching pushes you to that thing. We see it in so many developmental athletes. Do you define yourself by your sport? Does your sport define you? Or is your sport something you do and you really love to do? Those are very, very different things. When you define yourself by your sport and you have a bad day in your sport, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
And that's rough.
I think someone like Annie, who's had so many injuries, broken her back, broken her neck during sport, has thankfully is able to kind of adjust, but not everyone is able to recalibrate.
No, it's a very hard thing to do.
So this was the concern that I was getting on. This is the part that's going to get me in trouble. You look at women's cycling. You start as a Cat 3, and then the next level is Cat 1, 2, because women racing doesn't have a Cat 2. So you basically go from intro level to racing against domestic pros, and if you survive there, then you're racing against international pros. In the men's cycling, there's a lot more tiers, a lot more hand-holding to get you up to the highest level.
Forced development.
Right. Women, it is sink or swim. You know, we're doing better now with coaches and
Sure.
a lot of our centers helping to develop the women, but you go from being that beginner to racing against the best awfully quickly. And I think, like I saw at the center, you do have a lot of women who are phenomenally talented who are suddenly racing against the best, but haven't had the development, haven't had the experience, the practice to really know how to deal with it sometimes.
Well, you see it with really, really young riders. You see it around here with the men's juniors. They'll race the Cat 3s. And a lot of programs will force them to stay in the Cat 3s. But you'll have 14-year-old women who are so good that the Cat 3s is just not the place for them. They cannot race there. So they go race the 1-2s. Now they're podium in the 1-2. That's a lot. That's a big ask. And that's a really easy way to define yourself by your sport before you've even really gone through the changes that your body's going to go through.
Right.
And we used to see this in swimming all the time, that we would have young women coming through at 14. At 16, they were a completely different body shape. They were a completely different person. And you needed to have somebody along that line that went, that's okay. This is all right. No, you're not going to look like that. You've got to figure out how to swim or ride the way you look right now. And you can. It's okay. You're going to be able to. But you don't get a lot of that help. And to your point with going from 3 to 2 to 1, I remember when my wife was a Cat 3 cyclocrosser and she won Boulder Cup. She's like, this is great. Now she goes up to Cat 1, 2, and she's like, I would get last or third to last every race.
Yep.
And she's like, I was staying on the lead lap. Katie Compton was winning the local races, and I was staying on the lead lap. Like, that's a pretty solid performance, but it doesn't feel good to get trounced like that. It's a big jump.
Yeah.
And then the things you have to do in order to be competitive, it's hard to sustain. I think all that's fair.
I remember talking to a young woman who had just raced here in Colorado, and she was racing juniors in Colorado, which meant, you know, she'd never been in a field bigger than about 8, 9 riders, and had upgraded, and she was going to nationals and was about to race pros in a 100-person plus field when she had never done more than basically the equivalent of a small breakaway group.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
It's tough. It's
That is
really
tough.
tough.
Scary.
I think we nailed that one. And I didn't think you got yourself in trouble, Trevor.
Oh, I didn't try hard enough. I'll try harder next time.
God knows you're capable.
Well, shall we leave it there?
I think we shall.
Who wants to do the outro? I didn't even load it up.
That was another episode of Fast Talk.
That's all we get.
I don't think we need to say anything more than that.
I think we need to say the opinions expressed on Fast Talk are those of the individual.
Very
Especially
much so.
Trevor's.
Particularly on the potluck. That's kind of a necessary one on the potluck.
I think that's important. I think that's all that matters. Follow us on the socials. Pull them up. Comment.
Smash that like button.
Smash that.
Leave us a
The
comment
opinions you
and a
just heard
review.
are the worst opinions you will get from this group.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Cut me out of that one. Thanks for listening.